Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Richardson. I'm a professor here in the horticulture department at the University of Arkansas, and I'm really happy that you decided to join us today for our virtual field day. And what I'm going to be talking about today is a problem that we've been working on really for almost 20 years here at Arkansas, and it continues to be a problem for turfgrass managers here in the state. And the problem is a disease called large patch. And large patch is a disease that's caused by a fungus called Rhizoctonia solani. It's the same fungus that actually causes diseases on some of our cool season grasses like tall fescue. We call it brown patch in tall fescue, but the strain that actually infects the warm season grasses is a little bit different and behaves a little bit different in terms of when it's active on the turf. Now, this particular disease can actually infect just about all the warm season grasses that we grow here in Arkansas, including Bermuda grass, centipede, St. Augustine, and also zoysiagrass. And so the work that we've been doing here has been mainly done on zoysiagrass because this particular disease can be a real serious problem when turf managers are trying to maintain and manage zoysiagrass at a very high level. This disease, as I mentioned, it can also cause diseases on tall fescue, but that mainly occurs in the middle of the summer when it's very hot and humid. But this particular strain of Rhizoctonia actually prefers and works during the cooler parts of the year. Generally, when soil temperatures are between about 50 to 70 degrees in the spring and in the fall is when this disease is going to be most active. So it's kind of the shoulder seasons in terms of the growth of the grass that this disease is causing the most problem. Okay, so what we have here, this is a research area that we've been using for about 10 years now, and we have two different kinds of zoysiagrass growing out here. They're actually two different species. Over here on my left and your right is a species called Zoysia matrella, and the cultivar is called Cavalier. It's a very fine textured zoysiagrass used mostly on golf courses, but it can be used in home lawns. And then over here on my right and your left is a species called El Toro, or a species called Zoysia japonica, and the cultivar is El Toro. It's a more coarse textured grass that's used more in lawns than it is probably on golf courses, but it's also probably one of the most sensitive zoysiagrasses or susceptible zoysiagrasses to this particular disease. Now, we've got some very active patch occurring here right now. If we get down here and look a little closer, you can see these kind of very orange or yellow borders that are occurring here. These patches can be anywhere from just a few inches in diameter to up to 20 or 30 feet in diameter in some cases. But this orange area indicates that the disease is actually active right now, and so that's where it's actually infecting the turf and really causing problems on the turf. And you can see even right here in this picture, if you look in this area right here where we've got some thinning of the turf compared to where the disease hasn't been active over here where the turf is very healthy. This goes back to my earlier point, is that this is not too severe. It'll probably recover from this pretty quickly, but we'll see some disease a little bit later that really has thinned the turf out very significantly. And like I said, it could take upwards to 2 or 3 months for this to fully heal if it's severe enough. Okay, so one of the things that we do every year here at the University of Arkansas is we conduct fungicide trials to try to determine which fungicide or fungicide combinations are most effective at controlling and minimizing this disease. And again, we've been doing this for a number of years now, and usually we have anywhere from 25 or 30 different fungicides that we evaluate in these trials. Now, we run these trials simultaneously on both the Zoysia japonica El Toro and the Zoysia matrella Cavalier. And the reason we do it that way is that some years one of the species will actually have worse disease than the other, and that actually happened this year. The Zoysia matrella, the Cavalier, had almost no disease on it this year, but the Zoysia japonica has quite a bit of disease on it, and so we're going to just kind of focus on what we're doing here on this particular trial. Now, one of the things that you'll have available to you is a list of all the commercially available products that we're testing in this trial, and you're going to see that all of them kind of fall into one of three categories of fungicides. They're either going to be what are called DMI fungicides, things like propiconazole. It would be either an SDHI fungicide, which would be something like Prostar. or it's going to be what's called a QOI or a strobilurin fungicide, which would be something like Heritage. And so most of the treatments that we're looking at here today have either one or maybe two or even three of those different types of classes of fungicides in them. Now, fungicide applications on these on zoysiagrass or any of our warm season grasses to control this disease need to be started in the fall of the year. So generally when soil temperatures get down below 70 degrees for 4 or 5 days in a row is a good time to actually start fungicide applications. And what we've seen with this disease over the years is that generally it takes a couple of applications in the fall, about a month apart, and then when the grass greens up in the spring, you need to put at least one application on in the spring of the year. And in some cases, you might even need two, especially if we have a long cool period like we've had this year. That fungicide may not last until the disease has become inactive. So on a lot of these treatments, we'll have as few as one application of fungicide in the fall to upwards of 4 applications, 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. So let's look at a few of the products in here. Let's start over here with an untreated control. So this is a plot that hasn't received any fungicide this year, and you can see pretty heavy disease pressure occurring in this particular plot. You know, it's still very active, and you can see some very thin areas in the turf where the disease has really caused some significant problems. If we kind of walk back up here to this first row again, this first plot here is a combination product called Trinity and Insignia. And Insignia has the strobilurin fungicide in it, or strobilurin class in it, and then Trinity has the DMI class in it. So again, this is a case where it's a combination of 2 effective classes in one package. Now this particular plot, and we'll see some others like this, was last treated around the 30th of April. And we're starting to see a little bit of disease starting to come in here. So that fungicide that was even applied in the spring of the year may not necessarily hold it till the end of the disease cycle. So again, that's something to really think about. If you have an area that you really need to keep clean of this disease, even with a good fungicide like this combination, you may need to apply 2 applications in the spring to fully control it. Okay, so this group of plots right here are all from a company called PBI Gordon. And they include a couple of products, Tekken and Pedigree. And Tekken is an SDHI fungicide that has done that's done quite well. It also has a DMI in it, and then we have Pedigree, which is flutalonyl, which is the old fungicide called ProStar, and it's always been one of the more effective products for controlling this disease. And you can see here that these plots look very clean, very healthy, little to no disease occurring here. These 2 plots right here are representative of a type of fungicide application method that we don't see used a lot, but I've tested these products in the past, and they actually do quite well. And I think this is probably a couple of products that would be very applicable to the lawn care operator that's trying to manage this disease in any of the warm season grass lawns. Strobe Pro G and Pillar G are both granular formulation products. So it goes out on like a fertilizer type prill. And so many times for lawn care operators, that's going to be an easier way for them to apply product rather than having to mix up fungicides and take them out and spray them. And both of these products have looked really excellent this year, and I think have a lot of potential, especially again probably in the lawn care market, maybe more so than in the golf market. So again, if you're thinking about something for treating a lawn, these would be 2 products that I would highly recommend that you use. Okay, so this is a separate trial here that we're running with one of our chemical company cooperators, and the objective of this trial was to actually look at how the volume of spray that we're putting out with the fungicide, or watering the spray in after we apply it, is affecting the fungicide and how it's going to work. And so basically what we have in here is we have an untreated plot, which you can see over here on in the first plot here. Again, a lot of good disease activity. Typically these fungicides are recommended to be put out at a high volume of water or irrigated in, because where the disease is most active is down at the base of the plant around the crown. And so you want to get that fungicide down to where the disease is most active. And you can see here with 3 applications of these products, we've got very good control of the disease in this particular study. And now we compared those to a couple of products that we put out at half of the volume, or 44 gallons per acre. And then we allowed that fungicide to either dry on the canopy, didn't water it in, or we watered it in with 0.05 inches of irrigation. And again, the take home here is that, again, we're still getting excellent control, which is a good thing, because applying something at 2 gallons per thousand or 88 gallons per acre means that you're just going to need a lot more spray solution to cover the same area. So this is a good indication that we actually still are getting good control even when we reduce the volume of water that we're applying the fungicide in, and even compared to allowing it to dry on the turf or watering it in, we still got very similar results. And we did that with Acernity, which is from Syngenta, and also Mirage Stress Guard from Bayer, which again we've looked at a little bit already. So again, this could be something that we're going to continue to work on to try to understand if we can actually reduce the amount of water that we use to put the chemical out, and again save some time in terms of labor and water. So just to kind of wrap things up, if you're really wanting to control this disease with fungicides, it's really important that you start your fungicide applications in the fall, because that's when the infection is going to start. When that soil temperature gets down to about 70 degrees, you want to start thinking about getting your fungicide application started. And probably in most cases, if you're really serious about controlling this disease, you're going to need a minimum of 2 apps in the fall and 1 in the spring, and maybe even 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring to effectively and completely control this particular disease.